For many, all the grief, anxiety, and isolation brought on by the pandemic has taken a real toll on their mental health. But for my next guest, it served as a reminder of mental health issues she struggled with in silence for years, while putting on a brave face for family, friends, and for TV viewers.
As more kids return to the classrooms here in Massachusetts, the number of COVID cases in school is on the rise.
That, of course, is NBC Boston anchor JC Monahan, who broke her silence in the latest issue of Boston Magazine, writing about the depression and debilitating anxiety that fueled an emotional downward spiral a few years ago after two major life changes: a divorce after 15 years of marriage and a new job after even longer at her previous station, WCVB. She describes feeling like she was drowning in her own thoughts to the point that she could no longer breathe. And she writes about how she began to rely on anxiety medication to help her fall asleep. At first, it was just one or two pills more than prescribed. Eventually, I just stopped counting. A few more, a handful. One night, she left the bottle by her bed, apparently took more pills during the night, and nearly overdosed. She explains, "I only wanted to sleep, but I could have died." Ultimately, JC found the strength to reach out to the people close to her and ask for help. And now she hopes her story will help reach others struggling to do the same. JC Monahan joined me earlier to discuss. JC, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you too, Jim.
Let's start at the end. You said in the piece in Boston Magazine, it's likely you would not have spoken publicly were it not for the pandemic. Why?
100%, 110%. I mean, if you read the article, that was one of my major problems. I don't talk about these things, and I certainly wouldn't share it outside my friends and family. My belief was always, everybody has their stuff, right? What makes my stuff any different? Why would anybody want to listen to what I have to say? I mean, that was kind of part of my problem is that I didn't want to burden anybody. I didn't want to burden my friends. I didn't want to burden my family with what I was going through. So then after I went through all of it and then you come out the other side, you're sort of like, okay, but that was my trip. And I didn't think that it really was something anybody would want to hear. And it wasn't until...
I want to reiterate, you didn't even burden, as you say, burden is your word. You didn't tell your friends. You didn't tell your family. You didn't tell anybody. Is that correct?
Just about. I mean, I'm really close with my family. My mom knew. They knew when I was diagnosed with depression. So they knew in 2007. But it was basically managed. I mean, they knew I was seeing before this, like the spiral of crash of 2018, as I call it, I was only seeing a therapist once or twice a year. I mean, it was like maintenance at that point, and everything was going okay. So my family knew. My friends definitely didn't know. And that was part of it, is that I don't share a lot. I'm just like really private, and I grew up in sort of a house that we don't talk about things like that. And I don't want to, besmirk like the whole Irish Catholic community, but like in my Irish Catholic family, like we don't do this. I mean, you don't sit down and have these heart to hearts, and I always used to joke, I was like, unless there's like a screen, like right here for the person that I'm talking to, usually someone you can't see, unless the priest is there, there's not a lot of like chit chat, going on. I mean, my mom, don't get me wrong, great family. Mom says, I love you all the time. It's just that kind of thing. Yeah.
Were you worried what the reaction to your piece would be?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. From the beginning. I mean, it was, I spoke to some of my friends. I sent them the copy, some of the drafts as it went through, because I realized if I'm not comfortable sending them the draft, then I sure as shouldn't be publishing it. So I was really uncomfortable. I think what I thought in general, Jim, was that I would get some nice response. Like when I post something on Facebook and I post like a cute picture of my girls, you get this really lovely response. People saying like, oh, that's so great. And it's so cute. And I thought maybe that would be it, oh, good for you. And hopefully this will help someone. And it was so much more than that. And I also expected some negative feedback about, attention seeking sort of feedback, which would hurt me the most, because that is actually what almost stopped me from doing this, because doing this right now with you is even incredibly uncomfortable for me. Like like top 10 uncomfortable. You're a great
Well, let
guy,
me tell
Jim,
you-
but I don't want to do that.
Thanks. Not that great. Let me just say the first two things I found on Twitter this morning. First two, wonderful journalist, courageous woman. Kudos. This deeply personal article will both change and save lives. The next one, seeing someone notable open up like this, puts me in an odd comfort knowing I am not alone. Your friends were obviously a key to the support you needed to pull out of this thing. But, you know, as hard as it was for you at first to speak to them, you learned, I think, it is also really hard for those of us who want to help other people who are suffering with whatever it is, including mental health issues. So what's your advice to those people, JC? What do you say to people who want to help but really don't know how?
That was a huge part of why I wrote it, was because, you know, pandemic, we hear all these stories, mental illness, people dying by suicide. And I would hear on the other side, people saying, why didn't he reach out? Oh, I wish he would have talked to me. I would have been there for him. But what I wanted to point out is that is a huge ask for somebody who is struggling with whatever, I would assume, but certainly I can speak for myself. Getting out of bed is like asking me to climb Mount Everest. I mean, that's the weight of what I felt. So now you want me to pick up the phone and call somebody, especially when in my mind, I'm thinking this would just be a burden to them. Oh my God, then they'll feel obligated to come over. They'll feel obligated, you know, to help me now that I've dumped this on them. These are the key words that I'd be using in my head: obligated, dumped, burden. So that my point in the article was just show up, like some way or another, a text, a phone call, whatever it is. And I wrote in the article, I'm like, don't be offended if it's rejected. Don't be offended if I tried to push my friends away left and right. You know, I stopped talking to one of them when she was the one who kind of got this snowball rolling. When she heard me on the phone, I wasn't sounding coherent. She called somebody else to come to my house, and I was furious for a while. I'm like, how dare you, you know, intervene like this? And then, of course, you know, I came to realize that she was the most amazing friend I could ever ask for. It's just not, it's really, really hard. And I would say if you know anybody who is struggling with anything, they want help. I wanted help. I was trying with all of my being to stay alive. That was the fight. My fight was, what do I have to do today to get through tomorrow? What's going to help me to sort of overcome the mental game so that I can sleep tonight, so that tomorrow I can do more? So it was never, I don't want your help. I just don't know how to ask for that help. I didn't. That was just not in my wheelhouse. And frankly, Jim, I never had done it previously. You know, I moved 3 times and I did it on my own. I wasn't asking friends to come over with their pickup trucks or their, you know what I mean? It was like, nope, I'm going to do this on my own. Yeah.
JC, you close the final paragraph in your terrific piece. The first sentence is, I'd like to say I'd be happy if my story reaches one person, but I'd be lying. So for those who haven't read it yet, finish the paragraph. What's the truth?
The truth is, I wanted somebody who would read it, who would then pick up the phone and call somebody that they know, or text them, or talk to one of their friends to say, hey, I've kind of noticed that John isn't like hanging out with us as much, or, you know, he just doesn't sound like himself on the phone. Just to get that dialogue rolling, because that's how it starts, and that's how you get people to help. And that's what my friends basically did. You know, one called another who called another, because my 2 best friends don't even live around here. So they had to reach out to other people to kind of, you know, check in on me. But the whole idea was something's not right. And I'm not just going to sit back and say, oh, well, she'll open up when she's ready. I never would have been ready, period. Never.
JC, I would say for every single person who read that piece in Boston Magazine, you are a courageous person who is helping change the world piece by piece by piece. So on all of their behalf, we thank you. You did great. Thanks, JC.
Thanks, Jim, so much. I really appreciate it.